The losing streak is over, folks. The Golden State Warriors are back on track. Kylen Mills and I are going to break down the Golden State Warriors beating Houston 121-116. It was just a great game all around, Kylen, and we're going to break it all down next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you. Not me. Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can follow Kylen Mills on all social media platforms. Are you on Threads yet? You said last week you're going to do it. Are you on there yet?
Yes, I just made an account.
Boom!
Just my name.
Now it's official on all
just
social
my
media
name.
platforms.
It's just
At
Kylen
Kylen Mills. It's super easy. There you go. You can follow Kylen Mills on literally every social media platform. It's her name. It's super easy. You can follow me, Cyrus.
I haven't followed anyone yet, though. I actually haven't posted yet. So, but I made.
Have you? Account. But when you created your account, did like all your Instagram followers migrate over?
It linked. Yeah, it linked to my Instagram.
Nice. So you should have a nice base as a star. Your Instagram account is like huge, as from my recollection. But anyways, yeah, your name at Kylen Mills. You can follow me on Threads at Dog Wild. Kylen, great to see you. And what was your reaction, immediate reaction, to the Warriors snapping a 6-game losing streak, the worst homestand of Steve Kerr's career, head coach in the Golden State Warriors? Your thoughts and how you doing?
Doing well. Deep sigh of relief that the Warriors finally ended this losing streak. It never feels good to lose basketball games, even though we all had faith the Warriors would come out of it at some point. Great to see it happen. A couple of big takeaways. Positive performances from Andrew Wiggins and Klay Thompson. I think those two have to be a big focus moving forward, how to not only get them going, but continue them both playing well, playing aggressive, hitting baskets. I mean, Klay, it's crazy it took this long for Klay Thompson to have a 20-point performance. Like, that was kind of eye-opening just to like see that stat like written out and to hear it out loud. The fact that Klay Thompson hasn't had a 20-point game yet this season. Like, what? And the 1-foot pump fake, he had a couple of nice moves. And the thing is, with Klay, he is at his best. He had one or two maybe nice shots that he created off the dribble. There was one tough, like, I'm trying to remember, it was a turnaround hook on the baseline in the third quarter. But otherwise, he's much better when he shoots in rhythm, catch and shoot, does the pump fake, sends the defender flying, and then just puts it up rather than doing all the dribbling and, you know, some of the extra stuff that just I don't think serves him at all. So I just thought he looked a little bit smoother. He looked a little bit more relaxed. He let the game come to him. And that's the big issue for him. I mean, we know he can shoot the basketball, but it's a matter of whether or not he's pressing and forcing it, or whether he's getting those shots in rhythm off of some of the sets they run for him, or like I said, some of those different catch and shoot situations. So I think it's about time. I think Andrew Wiggins has strung together a couple of more positive performances. That's another big takeaway. Wiggs has got to get back to 2022 NBA Finals Wiggs. That's something I tweeted at someone who brought up just how badly his struggles were affecting the Warriors. And I mean, like, it's the same player. It's in there. Wiggins has it in him. Nothing has changed. So to me, those two are big keys to the Warriors' success moving forward. And then Draymond Green has got to get back and, you know, start contributing, because I do think that's been a factor during this losing streak, was Draymond Green getting suspended. And the Warriors do lose something when he's not on the floor. You know, they don't have a ton of size and a ton of depth in their front court. They have youth, yes, but still, he is a big piece of this team. They need him for his defensive presence, his rebounding. Yeah, he doesn't score baskets, but he also fires the team up. He's the defensive floor general. Like, they need him out there. So those are three key players moving forward that are going to have to contribute for the Warriors to continue to be successful, but some big positives tonight.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've been on the show since the Draymond Green, since the news was released that he was.
I have not since the suspension. Yeah.
We're real quick before we move on. I mean, we're 3 games into it now. I'm glad you brought that up. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about the fact that Draymond's absence has and very easily could play a part in the Warriors losing streak. I mean, he is a proven winner. Like, what were your thoughts? Was 5 games fair to you? Like, real quickly, what did you think about that?
5 games wasn't a huge surprise because it's Draymond Green. He was going to be punished. He was going to be suspended no matter what, because flat out last season, the NBA came out and said, we don't treat Draymond Green the same way we treat other players necessarily because of his history, because of his past violations, past transgressions, his history of flagrant fouls and technicals and getting suspended and hitting the limit almost every season or getting close to it. So the NBA has been very clear that Draymond Green is going to get harsher punishment than a lot of other players. So I immediately, when it happened, assumed that he would get a suspension from the league. Wasn't a huge surprise. I mean, 5 games was kind of what I was expecting. Whether or not that was the right amount, I don't know. It's not a huge surprise. But one thing I do, especially marinating on this a couple days now, Draymond Green has to do a better job controlling his emotions. That was unnecessary. He cannot do anything that's going to risk his ability to play in games with this team. And I think initially after it happened, there were aspects of it, not choking someone out. It's not funny, but like you see the pictures, you see the memes after the fact, you kind of like hee ha ha about it. And looking back on it, I was going to say, some of the screenshots made me chuckle just because of how ridiculous they were. Like, why is this happening on a basketball court? Why is he holding Rudy Gobert like this on a basketball court? Like, it's just ridiculous. But at the end of the day, it shouldn't happen. So I just feel like there does need to be accountability for Draymond Green. Whether or not 5 games is a fair suspension or not, I don't know. But I do think that he's got to do a better job of keeping his emotions in check and doing whatever he can to stay in games, because to me, part of this losing streak has been affected by Draymond Green not being on the floor. And there's been past situations where Draymond's been out for a stretch due to injury and stuff, and it has negatively affected the Warriors. So at the end of the day, he has to keep that team first attitude that he says he has when he's carrying out these actions on the floor. Am I going to risk myself being taken out of this game, future games? That's the kind of thing he needs to think about. He's a very cerebral player. He's a very smart guy, so he should know better by now. So I guess that's kind of like looking back and like reflecting on it a little more. I'm like, come on, Dre, you know better. Like, yeah, you can make light of the situation, all that, but at the same time, you know better. And I do think his absence has affected the Warriors during this losing streak.
Did you hear Paul George's take on the brawl?
No. What did he say?
This was I want to play this real fast because it is a good perspective. And until Paul George said this on his podcast, we never really heard like another player's perspective on how this thing went down, whether or not it was fair. So why don't we hear real fast from Paul George what his thoughts were on the scuffle? Here's Paul George.
In that moment, if I'm Draymond and I'm watching what's going on, the cardinal rule is like 2 players get into it, go check your teammate. Like, go grab your teammate. Don't grab my teammate. What's wrong with you?
Right.
Like, say a scuffle goes down and dudes start throwing punches and you wrapping me up and I can't defend myself. Like, go calm your teammate out.
See, Draymond seemed like, I don't like you.
Yeah, I can't speak for because the way man.
He was under.
And he had to.
It was UFC. He was literally like.
All right. I think we got the gist right there. What did you think, Kylen? Basically the gist is that, if you're going to break up a fight, don't put your hands on another team, on another team's player. Like, break it up with your own players. So Rudy Gobert, the video evidence was clear cut that he did put his arm around Klay, and that is clearly what triggered Draymond. So I just want to end that whole discussion on this note that the player perspective, the NBA player perspective, is that if you're going to break up a fight, touch your own teammates. Don't touch the other team's players. Your thoughts, Kylen?
I completely agree with that. And Draymond was clearly reacting. And I don't think it's wrong necessarily to try to defend your teammate. But to me, the headlock was still overkill. It went on for too long. It was too extreme. And like he said, it looked like he didn't like him, that Draymond didn't like Rudy Gobert. And I think that's the bottom line of the issue as well. And that's part of the reason why putting people in a headlock, violence isn't funny. But I think some people are chuckling is just the fact that, like, the history that Rudy Gobert and Draymond Green, or at least from Draymond Green's perspective, it's been apparent that he doesn't like Rudy Gobert. And you go back and we kind of brought up, we've talked about some of the past comments he made about Rudy Gobert, kind of mocking him for the crying scene. And like, just, there's been a little bit of back and forth between the two. And that's also why it was so ridiculous, because I do think that who it was part of the reason why it played out the way it did and why Draymond maybe reacted in that certain way or maybe to that extreme degree. But I totally agree. Rudy Gobert shouldn't have touched Klay Thompson in the first place. And I know the NBA ruled that he was a peacemaker, but I agree with that player perspective that you grab your own team 100%. Like that's definitely right. But still, Draymond's actions, I think, went too far. So I think there could be a little bit of both, you know.
Absolutely. There are levels to this. It just was wild to me that some people out there thought that Gobert was perfectly innocent. It's like, no, he was involved.
Yes, I agree. He shouldn't have been touching Klay in the first place, right? Like
exactly. And look, I think that's why he got the $25,000 fine as well. Did you see SNL give Draymond Green the treatment?
No.
They did. It was during their new segment, the Weekend Update segment. One of the castmates even had the gray speckles in his beard, right, like Draymond has now, and it was a gem. If you haven't seen it, and Kylen, you haven't, definitely check it out. It's on YouTube. Where Draymond Green, there is an impersonator. He's out there doing the whole thing, and with the anchor, the funniest part to me was when the anchor was like, "Yeah, did you hear?" Your own coach's words saying that you deserve the punishment. Dre's like, huh, and he starts writing Kerr's name down in a notepad, like he's keeping receipts, which made me wonder too. Like, I mean, I know Draymond reportedly behind the scenes is remorseful. He reportedly has told his teammates sorry, but at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if he kind of had a little chip on his shoulder directed toward his head coach because Steve Kerr did come out and say it was deserved. And I don't know how well Draymond's going to receive that. Like, do you think that's not going to be an issue at all? Or I don't know. Did you notice that? What are your thoughts?
I hope that Draymond doesn't hold a grudge over something like that. And I do think the organization needs to hold Draymond Green accountable. That's a hot topic that I've seen kind of floating around on Twitter because there is to some degree within the organization well, you know, it's Draymond. He's fiery. It comes with the territory. But at some point, he does need to be held accountable for keeping his actions in check and not acting in a way that's going to jeopardize his availability with a team, which ultimately impacts the team's, you know, chances at winning because he is an important piece of this lineup. And that's the thing about it. Like, I don't think it's wrong to necessarily jump in and defend your teammate. But at the same time, like Draymond's also got to think like he knows how strictly this league like he knows they're looking for a reason to suspend him. I personally think that like if there is an opportunity and Draymond does the slightest thing, like he is getting suspended. So he's got to think that in his head, like, does this team need to be suspended right now? Like if I go and do this, like what are the repercussions going to be? So I just, you know, I do think there has to be a level of accountability rather than just it's Draymond, like he's always going to be a hothead. He's always going to be fiery. He's always going to be like, yes, to some degree, that's what makes him him. But he also has been around this game long enough. He is a veteran. He knows better than doing something like that, especially with the way that he's policed within the NBA. So that's my final thought on the thing.
No, it's a great thought. And look, I don't think I agree with you. And on top of that, look, he's on thin ice with his own team now. So if anything, look, this 6-game losing streak, Wiggins is incredibly poor start, Klay's poor start, Draymond getting in all this, because before the suspension, he also was ejected in 2 of the 3 games leading into that. Who knows? Maybe all this stuff happening now is an absolute blessing in disguise. And come January, February, March, this team's going to be getting it together. We'll find out. But in just a moment, we're going to talk about Klay and Wiggins because the last 2 games, whatever this ridiculous slump is, and look, each one has different circumstances. Clearly, they're both different individuals, but they're coming together at the right time. I also want to talk about Chris Paul. He blends in like camouflage. I heard someone say that recently, which totally rings true to me. We got a lot to discuss. Let's first, though, give some love to one of our sponsors of this evening, and that's eBay, more specifically eBay Motors. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd. Kylen, have you ever been a guest on his program or ever checked him out?
No, but I've seen it. Yeah, it's awesome. I personally don't do fantasy, but I think it's
I used to. It's not that I'm averse to it. I used to be a fantasy junkie, and it's time consuming though. If you want to be successful at fantasy, you practically have to be married to it.
So that's the thing, dude. Have you ever done NBA fantasy?
Me, yes, but it's been years.
It's so time consuming. That's the thing. Like, so I actually tried to do it a year or two ago, and you have to like be committed every single week to changing out your lineup and you putting guys in, and now like it just was so time consuming. I couldn't do it. So that's kind of why.
I totally agree with you. It's too much of a commitment for me personally. I got too much going on. But if you're into fantasy basketball, Josh Lloyd is the man for you. His show, by the way, is like the ratings killer for the entire Locked On podcast network. I mean, killer in a good manner. Like his numbers are just blowing everyone else's away. So, anyways, Josh Lloyd brings you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft, you're scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to bring you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So these are the players for this week that Josh has picked out for eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Kylen, I'm going to give you 5 names. You tell me which one of the 5 you want to learn more about. These are Josh's 5 picks. Bilal Coulibaly of the Washington Wizards. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Skylar Mays of the Portland Trailblazers. Jacob Gilyard for the Grizzlies. Kyle Lowry of the Miami Heat. And Keontae George of the Utah Jazz. Which one of those 5 would you like to learn more about?
Keontae George. I am very curious about how he's fit in.
The Jazz's newest starting point guard has tallied 20 assists in his first 2 starts. It may be rocky, but he is worth grabbing. That's courtesy of Josh Lloyd. And Josh Lloyd is going to help you win your fantasy basketball championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. eBay Motors is awesome. If you need to buy any part for your car, it's all about the perfect fit. That green check light needs to go off when you slide the part into the box. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, baby, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for your 24/7 here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And subscribe to Kylen Mills on social media on all platforms. It's her name. That's simple. At Kylen Mills. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Threads at Dog Wild. Kylen, do you have the stats in front of you? And if yes, can you enlighten me and the audience on how Klay Thompson did tonight? Because he broke out of that season-long slump, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. About time. And he was hot even before the fourth quarter. I think he had 16 or 18 points in the third, and then just tacked 1 or 2 on. So Klay Thompson finished with 20 points. He went 7 of 16 from the floor, 5 of 11 from 3. So good night. 1 for 1 from the free throw line, tacked on 3 boards, 3 assists, had only 1 turnover, which is actually pretty good, and 1 foul. Interestingly enough, he finished at a -3, and so did Steph Curry, but you got to take that with a grain of salt. Still good shooting night for Klay, 7 of 16 from the floor, but more importantly, 5 of 11 from 3-point land. We'll take it all day. Hopefully Klay Thompson keeps it going.
Absolutely. And it was just good to see him actually being in rhythm, not forcing shots for the most part.
Exactly.
And like you mentioned, the shooting percentages were solid. So good to see him finally just cracking the 20-point mark. It was at 20, but look, positive is a positive. What about Andrew Wiggins? How did he do this fine evening, if you don't mind me asking?
So Wiggs, I think, has had a couple of positive performances in general, but he still didn't shoot great tonight. Wiggs went 3 of 10 from the floor. He did finish with 12 points, 7 boards, 1 assist.
Okay, this
He
board's
did go
good.
he did go 2 of 3 from beyond the arc and 4 of 4 from the free throw line, which is what I liked, is when he attacks the basket and is able to draw fouls and get to the line. So that's good. Hitting 2 of 3 from beyond the arc is good. 3 of 10 from the floor. Something's still a little bit off, but I think he's played better.
Yeah, agreed.
So there's still some positives. Again, like I wasn't blown away by his performance, but I think that he looked a little more energized. And I think that he has played marginally better than he did to start the season during that slump.
Oh my God, that's an understatement. Absolutely. And look, in my humble opinion, I feel like the Warriors can survive a Klay Thompson that's fading, right? That's past his prime, and we're only getting a shell of his old self. I don't know if the Warriors can survive Andrew Wiggins out of the blue at 28 years
No.
of age in the prime of his life, just for some baffling reason. No one has a clear-cut explanation. Rick Barry was on our show a week or two ago. He thinks it's mechanics. Now, why Andrew Wiggins' mechanics are off, that's a whole other question. But great to see him turning it around. Even though those 7 rebounds were huge, in my opinion, and I also feel like the 2 for 3 shooting from beyond the arc is huge, because as long as he's stretching the floor as a 3-point threat, that's awesome. Any final thoughts on Wiggs or Klay before we move
No, and
on?
I thought that Wiggins played good defense. And that's something that I said throughout his slump. Like, I don't think he was always bad defensively. But I think the last couple nights he's looked good on defense. So that is a positive. What did
Absolutely.
you want to get into after this?
When we got Chris Paul, we have
Chris Paul.
But, yeah, Damon Bruce is going to be on this show Wednesday, and I was on his program, and I think he's the one who said that Chris Paul has been blending in like camouflage, or like beige. The color beige is what he said. And he makes a good point. I don't think we've talked about him once on this show extensively since the season started, for good reason. He blends in. He's quietly giving us good nights. The production's there. It's his 3-point shootings on the rebounds. We're going to talk about him in just a moment. FanDuel is who we got to give love to. A great game tonight, by the way. Did you watch the Chiefs and the Eagles? What did you think about that? Did you watch it?
I watched a little bit of it. I watched a little of both, but it was a good game.
Yeah, it was. And the reason why I bring it up is because this NFL season, you can score with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. I told you folks this on Saturday's show. With this promotion that FanDuel has going on, all you got to do is bet $5 on a money line bet, meaning no spreads. And what I told you folks on Saturday was bet on whoever the Carolina Panthers play, because even though the odds suck, if you bet that $5 and you win the money line bet, you will get $150 in bonus bets courtesy of FanDuel. It's as good as cash. All you got to do is just bet $5 on a money line. So pick a clear-cut favorite, a team you know is going to win, even if the odds are horrible with the money line, because you get $150 with FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season, and also get into the NBA season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, one final segment. You can follow Kylen Mills again on all social media platforms at Kylen Mills. Chris Paul, he's been fantastic in my humble opinion. Maybe that's a strong word, but he's been great. I don't know if the numbers are necessarily showing it. I know his 3-point shooting to start the season was not good. It was actually really bad, but he's also turned that number around, thankfully. His season 3-point shooting is now up to 30.2%. That's up from, I think, like 15. How did you do tonight, Kylen? And what are your overall thoughts on Chris Paul this year?
Chris Paul has fit in with the Warriors seamlessly. I personally did not see it working this well this soon, and he has been a very pleasant surprise. A final look at Chris Paul's numbers. He did go pretty deep in this game, 34 minutes, 15 points, so that's a positive. 4 of 7 shooting from the floor, 3 of 5 from 3, 4 of 4 from the line. I like that he also is getting to the line, drawing some fouls. That was a big positive to see. But here's the stat that stands out to me. 6 rebounds, 12 assists. 12 assists.
Oof, yeah.
That is a 15-12 double-double is a good night. He also had a pair of steals, so, getting it done a little bit defensively as well, and he was a team best plus 12. And I do think that plus 12 in this case is indicative of his impact on the game, because that 12 assist number, facilitating like that, I mean, that stands out to me. 15 points, yeah, that's a good contribution. I like that he got to the line so many times. 6 rebounds, honestly, being active on the boards for a guy his size, just crashing the glass, quite simply. That's great to see. But I've been just really surprised by how well he fits in with this team. He had 1 turnover in those 34 minutes.
Yep.
For a guy who's handling the ball so much, I mean, it's much needed on this Warriors team, honestly, that has been, known for turnovers with the pace of their offense.
Absolutely. Val in the comments says that I've changed my tune on Chris Paul, that I said I hate him starting. Still do. I'm not a fan of it. I'm glad they won tonight, but I would prefer him not being out there with Steph and Curry. And part of the reason, besides the fact that they're both diminutive and other teams are going to attack him, is what Joe writes here. And I don't know, Kylen, what your thoughts are on this, but Joe in the comments writes that both Steph and Chris Paul should not be playing 30-plus minutes a game in the regular season. It's going to show by the end of the year. We've already seen that with Chris Paul, where he's worn down. What are your thoughts on that, Kylen? Like, is it worth it to win these games in November at the price of possibly having these two exhausted by the end of the year? Or maybe they won't be. Your thoughts?
In general, I don't think it's worth it to play both Steph and CP3 so many minutes in November. However, I think in the current circumstance, with a team looking to snap a 6-game losing streak, you have to do whatever it takes. And Steve Kerr actually said that in postgame. I just was glancing at my phone, and there was a quote that I saw on Twitter that he said it was do anything necessary in this game. That's why Steph Curry played the entire fourth quarter, was given the losing streak. Sometimes you just need to get over the hump, and then the wins start coming more easily. We knew this game, we were just going to have to do whatever it takes to get the dub. So this one time, I don't have a huge issue with both Klay Thompson and Chris Paul going 34, 35 minutes. But I think it cannot be a regular thing. This cannot be a theme. The Warriors do need to look for opportunities to rest both of those players, because they're getting up there in age, and those two are going to be critical come the postseason. The whole idea of this Warriors team is that they have so much depth that they can look for opportunities to rest some of their older veterans. And I think the awesome thing is that we've seen so much promise from the young guys, and I trust Brandon Pajemski going out there if Steph or Chris Paul are sitting out at night. Like, I like him handling the ball. I like him handling the offense. Lester Quinones surprised me with his ability to run the floor in some of the minutes that we saw from him during preseason. You got Corey Joseph, and I'm not a big fan, to be honest. But you have depth. I'm just going to say that. You have depth. He can get the job done to some degree. Did you see Steve Kerr's comments? I'm going to toss it back to you for a quick question. What did you think about Steve Kerr's comments regarding rotations? Anthony Slater of The Athletic posted a long clip of it yesterday, I think it was, but him talking about how—
You want to hear now?
Yeah.
All right. This was what you're referring to was during pregame, and
okay, was it pregame?
Yeah, it was during the pregame, and Steve Kerr. We might as well. It's very relevant. And kudos to Anthony Slater, who this was courtesy of Threads. More media members are going there now. And here was Steve Kerr discussing in a bunch of questions. Slater followed up with him twice. You're going to hear it right now. But here's Steve Kerr talking about the rotations and the early struggles for the team this year.
I want to settle on a 9-man rotation. I know obviously 2 of your potential rotation guys are out tonight, but like, how soon are you talking? Like, how quickly do you—
I don't know. Like I said, it's, sometimes it's really clear and it just happens. And then other years it's not as clear, and you have to experiment. You have to give guys opportunities, and it's really hard when you're losing to decide on your top 9 or 10. So we just got to keep going and try to win each game and see what takes shape.
Does this remind you of a season from previously?
Not really. I would say most of the time since I've been here, we've had a pretty clear top 9 or 10. I don't think we've had a season where I felt like 12 or a possibility on any given night. That's a good sign, though. We got a really good roster, but we've just got to figure it out, and it's going to mean that there are going to be some people who are unhappy, and that's it's going to be how it goes.
Yeah, last one on this. I mean, in some ways, at times your young guys are can be performing better than your veterans. How difficult is that decision of potentially lowering veteran minutes for young guys?
Yeah, and all that has to be factored in. I mean, look, I'm really patient, and I've got guys who are championship players, and if you look at Klay and Wiggs early on, they both have struggled, but I'm of the opinion that we got to show some patience because we know what they are. And you look at Wiggs the other night. I mean, he looked great, and so I think our patience has been rewarded. I think you're going to see a different Wiggs from here on, and I think the same thing's going to happen with Klay. So all of that factors in the early part of the season when, I would say a guy like Moses, for example, I think he deserves more playing time. Like, he's played really well, and he's just got such a great approach. And but there's a lot of factors as to why he hasn't, and some of that is we're trying to get Klay and Wiggs going. Some of it is we're trying to play some other guys as well and see what some combinations look like. So that's the difficult part if you're a player involved. You do everything you can, and you still might not be rewarded, and it's frustrating, but it's all part of the job.
Yeah, it's part of his job. Kylen, what are your thoughts? There's a lot to unpack there. Let's start with Kylen. Go first, please, if you don't mind. What were your thoughts on that? That's a lot there.
First of all, kudos to Anthony Slater for asking the question or the series of questions, because they're great questions. I think a lot of folks have been asking, given the way that he's utilized certain players. God, I don't even know where to start with this. First, it's a head scratcher to me that the man who decides who plays how many minutes is saying that Moses Moody should be playing more minutes. Sir, so play Moses Moody then. Play Moses Moody more minutes, because Moses Moody has been one of the conundrums I don't understand this season, because he gets in the game, he looks great, and then he plays 12 minutes. And I don't understand. I was glad to see him get extended run. He played 20 plus tonight. Didn't have a particularly productive night. He had one nice take, and I remember he pulled up in the lane. I was like, okay, you go, Moody. But I think that in general, this season, he has played well, and he hasn't gotten the minutes that he deserves. And I don't think that you can necessarily, I just don't think you can justify playing slumping veterans, or maybe veterans who are past their prime and not producing, over the young players. Kerr mentioned patience, but at what point does the patience become stubbornness, unflexibility? I don't know where that line is drawn in terms of, hey, recognizing this person is not helping the team at this point. We need to go a different direction. We need to play the player who is. So it's a fine line, especially with Klay and Wiggs. They both have proven a lot already to this organization. But at the same time, where is that line drawn? In your opinion, Cy, where is that line drawn? Do you think he should have been pulling those two earlier, or, during their recent slump?
I wouldn't just bench them all together, but I do think that Kerr makes minute distribution more complicated than it really is. To me, you can tell a considerable difference between the Warriors pre and post Mike Brown. Like, pre Mike Brown, substitutions were seamless. There's a lot of instinctual decisions there. It was a lot of the substitutions were based on what the opponents were giving you. Since Mike Brown left, it's all about like structure. It's like, okay, you're going to play this minute to this minute in this quarter, and then you're going to play this minute to this. Like, there's nothing organic about the substitutions, and that's where I do wish I wish that's what we see more of. If you're playing great, you play more. You're getting rewarded for that. Not you're playing great, but Klay's been here for this many years and we won 4 championships. So even though you're playing great, you're going to hit the bet. Like, I don't subscribe to that at all. And it's, but yeah, that was, I agree with everything you just said there, Kylen. So you nailed it perfectly, in my humble opinion. All right. Great show. Good stuff. Warriors won. Yeah. We're back at it tomorrow, Kylen. We'll talk more about this and so much more. Follow us. Follow Kylen on all social media platforms. Add her name, Kylen Mills.
Including Threads now. Including Threads
There
now.
you go.
So I haven't posted yet, but I am on there and I will post at some point.
There you go. And I'm on Threads at Dog Wild. And just follow either one of us. We'll tell you when we're on next. Bye-bye, everyone.
Night night.